Hey, welcome back, Better Call Saul fans. Today I want to talk about, could Saul and Kim be working for Gus during Breaking Bad's universe? I've got 8 things for us to think about, 8 things for us to consider. Before we jump into it, there are absolutely spoilers for Breaking Bad, as well as Better Call Saul up to Season 6, Episode 8, Point and Shoot. If you have not gotten that far, please leave this video. I don't want to spoil anything for you. It's too good. Also, I'm going to be using the name Saul to refer to Saul during Breaking Bad, and I use the name Jimmy to refer to Jimmy during Better Call Saul. In my mind, at least so far in Better Call Saul, he has not made that leap to Saul yet. So Jimmy's still Jimmy in Better Call Saul in my mind. So I'll use both of those names, and that's kind of how I differentiate the two. Also, I have not seen any teasers that involve Walt or Jesse. I think there might be some. I've seen some YouTube channels that reference like trailers that involve them and make theories based on those trailers. I have not seen what those trailers are. I have not watched those videos. I have not looked for leaks. I have not looked for spoilers. I don't want to hear any of that. So whenever I see those channels that, tell me what they saw in a trailer and they put that in like the YouTube title, I get so upset, and I unrecommend and unsubscribe from that channel, because I don't want to know anything other than what the show's actually going to be when I get to watch it live. So there's no spoilers in anything that I'm going to say here. So you are safe, and please, in the comments below, I want to hear your comments, but don't put any spoilers or leaks or film production details in the comments below. So just be cool on that. All right, so let's jump into it. 8 different things that I think we need to consider if Saul and Kim are working for Gus during Breaking Bad. So the way I've structured this is I have 5 reasons why they could be working for Gus during Breaking Bad, and then 3 reasons why they could not be working for Gus during Breaking Bad. So that's how it's structured. Let's go into the first reason why they could be working for Gus. And that relates to how Saul and Mike have a very professional relationship in Breaking Bad. We know that Mike and Saul still work together fairly extensively in Breaking Bad. Included in this relationship is Saul calling Mike to be a cleanup man in Jesse's apartment after Jane dies. And Mike goes and offers basically the same service that he offered to Kim and Jimmy when Howard died. So, Mike went to Jesse's apartment and he cleaned everything up, and he told Jesse exactly what to do and how to handle the cops after Jane died. And Saul was responsible for connecting them. Another area that they have a connection is Saul asked Mike to put a bug in Walter's house so that they could keep tabs on the White family. And there's another connection where Saul connects Walt and Jesse to Gus through Mike, of course, because Saul does not know Gus by name. So my thought is that if they have this type of working relationship in Breaking Bad, and by the way, there's plenty more examples that I didn't list out here, but those are just 3 ways that they work together in Breaking Bad. And so my thought is, if they're able to work together like this in Breaking Bad, where they coordinate on a variety of areas, it's really not hard at all to imagine that they could have additional professional ventures that we do not see on screen. Could Gus have Saul working on additional things through Mike that we have not seen yet? I think that's a strong possibility, especially when we consider point number 2. And point number 2 is that Saul really pressures Jesse and Walt to cook. If you get the chance to rewatch the end of Season 2 when we are introduced to Saul Goodman and the beginning of Season 3 of Breaking Bad, you'll notice that Saul really pushes Jesse and Walt to keep on cooking their blue meth. And it's got me thinking that maybe there's an additional layer there that we did not see before. Now, before you tell me this in the comments, yes, I do know and I do remember that Saul is getting a fee for laundering their money. At first it's 17%, and then it gets negotiated down by Walt to 5%. So that's absolutely one component of his financial incentive and why he wants them to cook. There's no doubt about it. He wants to get that money laundering fee. But what if Saul in Breaking Bad is making money in this situation on both ends of the spectrum? He's getting the money laundering fee from Walt and Jesse. We already know that. But could he be paid by Gus for connecting them? Some kind of finder's fee? Or for encouraging them to continue their work with Gus in Season 3? What if Saul knows that Gus really wants them to cook, and Saul is trying to make a good impression on Gus. And so he's continuing the pressure on Walt and Jesse to get them to do this. What if also Gus told Mike to get Saul to encourage Walt and Jesse to keep cooking? And that's the scene that we get with Walt and Jesse when they make their cameo in Better Call Saul. And it's somehow revealed that even though Saul doesn't know who Gus is or doesn't know his name, he still takes orders from him as well as gets compensated by him. Now, we do know that Saul has this great house that we saw in Season 6, Episode 1 of Better Call Saul, likely from the Sandpiper money, and he's presumably got a lot of clients from his reputation as the lawyer for the Salamancas, as well as his eye-catching billboards and TV commercials. So I think financially, Saul's doing just fine without any of Gus's money. But Saul is definitely a greedy person, and having some additional incentive from Gus to make this blue meth really fits into Saul's character arc, as well as Gus's desire to really ramp up his meth distribution. My third point and third reason why Saul and Kim could be working for Gus is that Jimmy and Saul, both of them, are obsessed with money. In Season 1, Episode 1, Uno of Better Call Saul, Jimmy says a line that stuck with me for a while. He's talking to Chuck about doing public defender work and how he's making so little he might as well donate plasma instead. And Chuck says to him in response, "Money is beside the point."
9 yards. You know what I took home? $700. Yeah, I might as well head down to Skid Row and sell plasma.
You're representing people who have nowhere else to turn. The money is beside the point.
Money is not beside the point. Money is the point.
And that ethos has clearly stuck with Jimmy throughout the entire series. Here's just a few examples. He's obviously trying to do right by his clients who are living in the Sandpiper home, but we have to remember there's a big financial incentive for him in discovering the fraud that's going on there. So there's definitely a big financial component there. Also, while he was working at the cell phone store while he was on his law suspension, instead of just taking a salary from that job, he uses some of the cash that he has to buy burner phones from the store himself, and then he sells them on the streets for a big premium. Also, multiple times, Lalo hires Jimmy. First, when he needs to get a message to Crazy 8, and second, when he needs someone to get the $7 million bail money from his cousins in the desert. In each meeting, Jimmy actually negotiated his rates for these jobs instead of simply walking away and saying, "Hey, I'm not interested." The first job paid him $8,000, even though he asked for $7,925, and the second job, the bagman job, it paid him $100,000. I should note that in the first meeting with Lalo about Crazy 8, he really didn't know if he was going to make it out alive, as he originally thought he was going to be killed, only to later find out that they only wanted him for legal help. So, while we can give Jimmy a break on that one because of the nerves, the bagman one showed how desperate he is for the money, as Lalo literally said in the room in the jail that if Jimmy didn't want to do it, it was not a problem. He would find someone else. And as Jimmy is walking out the door, he could have walked out the door, but he stops before he gets there. He throws out a number, $100,000, to which Lalo accepted. So my point on all these examples is that Jimmy is someone who is pretty damn obsessed with money, and he doesn't really think through the consequences of what could go wrong by trying to get more and more and more. So it is completely within the realm of possibility, in my mind, that Saul in Breaking Bad creates some kind of deal with Gus through Mike where Saul gets paid as long as the blue stuff keeps on cooking. My fourth point here, and I got to bring in Kim, is that Gus knows the lengths that Kim and Jimmy will go to protect each other. In Season 6, Episode 8, Point and Shoot, Kim goes over to Gus's house because Jimmy persuaded Lalo to let her go instead of making Jimmy go. Jimmy obviously thought that whoever stayed at the apartment was going to die, so he wanted Kim out of there, and he was willing to sacrifice his life so that Kim could have a chance. But don't forget, folks, while we recognize Jimmy's sacrifice here, do not forget that Kim also thought that if she did not kill this nerdy black guy who looks like a librarian, per Lalo, that Jimmy was gonna die. And faced with the prospect of either going to the cops are murdering someone for her husband, she chose to go with murder. She was willing to kill for Jimmy. So at this point in the story, I imagine Gus knows all of this. He knows that Jimmy wanted Kim to go instead, and he likely understands the sacrifices that he made. But he also understands how far Kim went in this process to protect Jimmy. So my point here is that Gus knows the lengths that these two are willing to go for each other, and he might use that as leverage against them in some way. Kind of like the situation with Nacho, where he forced Nacho's hands and he used the leverage that he had on Nacho to get Nacho to work for him, despite Nacho wanting out of the game entirely. We could see that happening, and that could be one really great reason why one or both of these characters are working for Gus in the Breaking Bad universe. My fifth point here is that it would show Breaking Bad in a completely new light. The writers have said that by the time Better Call Saul is done, we will be looking at Breaking Bad in a completely new light. Now, you could argue that since we know Howard and Lalo, rest in peace Howard, not you Lalo, are buried together in the meth lab underneath where Walter and Jesse cook, that they've already achieved this, that we've already seen, that we already will see Breaking Bad in a new light, and that is already complete. But in my mind, I still think there's going to be additional twists and turns that are going to shed more light on the Breaking Bad era specifically. And what better way to frame the show in a new way than to show one of the main Better Call Saul characters as a behind-the-scene character in Breaking Bad. So since Kim has spoken to Gus, heard his voice, and even knows where he lives, I think we might see Gus meeting Kim in the Better Call Saul universe, as well as potentially in the Breaking Bad universe. So those are 5 reasons why they could be working for Gus in Breaking Bad. Now let's talk about 3 reasons why they may not be working for Gus during Breaking Bad. My very first reason is that Saul does not know Gus's name, and he has not met Gus. Do you remember when Saul hints at knowing someone who can help Walt and Jesse distribute their blue meth? And this is in Season 2, Episode 11. He says that Walt and Jesse need someone who is an honest-to-goodness businessman, someone who has treated your product as a high-margin product, deals only in bulk, deals out of town, and has been doing it for 20 years and never been caught.
Now, what you two need is an honest-to-God businessman, right? Somebody who treats your product like the simple, high-margin commodity that it is. Somebody who ships out of town, deals only in bulk, someone who's been doing this for 20 years and never been caught.
On the one hand, it is quite interesting that Saul literally describes Gus to a T. I mean, this is a perfect synopsis of who Gus is and how he operates. So he learns a lot about Gus from where we are in Better Call Saul right now to where he will be in the Breaking Bad timeline. So he's going to learn a lot in that intervening period. However, there's one big remaining problem, which is that Saul doesn't know who he is. He says this guy's low profile, and he knows a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy.
Let's just say I know a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy.
Again, he doesn't even know Gus's name, and he does throw in potentially one too many quote-unquote guys that he needs to know, because presumably he knows Mike, who knows Gus, and that's the only connection we make. But he thinks that there's a third person involved in there, or at least that's what he says to Walt and Jesse. So perhaps there actually is a third person involved here. Could Kim possibly be one of those 3 quote-unquote guys that Saul mentions here? Or is that just something that we need to give the writers a break about and not think too much of it? So I hope you understand what I'm saying on this point, especially about the 3, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy. And you can let me know in the comments if we're making too big of a deal about this, or maybe Kim's one of those guys, or maybe there's some other 3-person connection from Saul to Gus that I'm not thinking about here. Now, if you are still following my train of thinking, the question I have here is, how likely is it that Gus actually trusts Saul enough to work with him? If he will not reveal his name to Saul, there is a chance that meeting Gus and revealing his identity is on a need-to-know basis, and that has been true at least in Breaking Bad. And maybe in this scenario, Gus never felt like Saul really needed to know his true identity. So that's definitely a plausible scenario there. The other thing that I want to mention is that there is a chance that Saul does not know the Meth King guy is the same guy that Lalo ordered him and Kim to kill in Better Call Saul, because Lalo tells them to go kill a black, medium height mouse cat who looks like a librarian, but he never gives them a name. And Kim sees the stunt doubles when she gets to his house, but she also never learns Gus's name. So I think there's a chance that Jimmy and Saul never connect the dots, that he was ordered to kill in Better Call Saul, that who he was ordered to kill in Better Call Saul is the same guy who is helping distribute Walt and Jesse's meth. And I hope that makes sense, because that's a little bit roundabout way of saying it. But I think there's a chance that Jimmy and Saul are not able to connect the dots there. So coming around to my main point, Gus does not trust Saul enough in Breaking Bad to reveal himself. And if that's the case, it might dampen the odds that Saul and Kim are working for Gus, even if it is behind the scenes. The second reason they may not be working together is that in season 3, episode 5 of Breaking Bad, Saul is really surprised by the deal that Walt gets with Gus. Towards the end of that episode, Walt and Jesse and Saul are meeting to discuss Jesse making the blue meth after Walter gets out of the game. In that meeting, though, Walter announces that he's come to a new agreement with Gus that's going to pay him $3 million for 3 months of his time. This is also the same scene where Walt negotiated Saul down to 5% to launder his money. But my point here is that if Saul were working for Gus behind the scenes, why would he be surprised by this development? So either he's not working for Gus, or he's working for him, but Gus really keeps him at arm's length and does not notify him of the latest developments in the business. But now that I think this through, isn't that exactly the same thing that Gus did with Mike in Better Call Saul basically all of season 6 up to episode 8? Gus did not give Mike the whole truth about what he suspected Lalo was up to, even though Mike is clearly on Gus's team. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit and say maybe there is a chance that Gus is just the type of boss who doesn't tell his whole team every single thing that's going on, and it might frankly, impede their ability to serve him best, as clearly happened with Mike and Gus with the Lalo situation. So there's a chance that maybe Gus doesn't fill Saul in on all the details of the meth business, and that would explain this particular qualm that I have. Now, my third point as to why they are unlikely to have Kim working for Gus in Breaking Bad is probably my biggest one here, which is, and I'm going to do a separate video on this maybe when the series is over, but Kim wants to do meaningful work. She does not want to do drug lord work. Her entire character arc, in my mind, has been shunning the people in society who are focused on things that she finds meaningless and lacking purpose. She becomes wholly uninterested with helping Kevin opening banks in a dozen different states. She has no desire to have a big, giant car or house. She simply wants to make a difference in the lives of her clients, particularly the ones who traditionally cannot afford solid legal representation. Given all of that, I would be shocked if Kim willingly said, hey, being a lawyer or advocate for Gus and Madrigal, that'd be really fulfilling to me. I would be making sure that all the drug addicts can get the best blue meth ever made. I just cannot see her saying that or choosing to work there willingly. The only way I can see that happening is if she and Jimmy are somehow forced to work for Gus and Madrigal. There would need to be some kind of carrot and stick, to reference an earlier episode, to make Kim do that. But as of right now, what do Gus and Mike actually have on Jimmy and Kim? That they set up a scheme to ruin Howard's reputation is the only thing that I can think of. So could they realistically hold that over their heads to get Kim to work against her will for Gus in Breaking Bad? Boy, I doubt it, although I guess it is a slight possibility. Now, I will say on this particular point, I absolutely can see Saul in Breaking Bad indirectly working for Gus, as he kind of already is in Breaking Bad, given his thirst for money. That's completely plausible in my mind. But Kim is not obsessed with money. She's obsessed with meaning. She's obsessed with making a difference in the lives of people in tough situations with few or zero advocates in their life. So I can't see Kim breaking bad here to work for Gus, or at least not willingly. So those are 8 points, 5 reasons why they could be working for Gus in Breaking Bad, 3 reasons why they may not be working for Gus in Breaking Bad. I hope they gave you something to chew on, something to think about as we wait for Monday's episode. As always, if you have anything that you think I missed, please put it down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I will see you next time. Bye.